Starting it now. Welcome to another episode of Tough Talk Tuesday. As always, I'm your host, Lucas Biggers. Alongside me is Jules. We will also have at some point the welterweight champ, Lamont Peterson. We tried to reach out to him already, maybe having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we'll definitely get him on the show later on. Jules, last weekend was one hell of a fight between Wilder and Washington. If I'm not mistaken, I had Washington winning pretty much every round until he get knocked out in the fifth round. Is that what you saw?
Oh, yeah, definitely, Luke. I'm going to be honest with you. Gerald Washington really surprised me. I said it earlier. I thought he was going to get crushed early. I was looking for the, first round, second round knockout. And he fought like a man who wasn't trying to lay down. He fought like he was trying to become champion. He fought like a man who was really trying to give it his all. I think with that fight, it was inexperience that showed. And once again, Wilder, he's a dangerous man. He has a lot of knockouts, obviously. And he showed, once again, what happens when, you go up against a big man and a big puncher like Wilder. It actually reminded me of Tyson versus Botha, when Botha was beating Tyson every round, and it looked like he was going to pull off a huge upset. All of a sudden, Tyson hits him with his right hand from out of nowhere and puts Botha out, and that's what it would have reminded me of with Wilder.
Same here. And this isn't the first time either with Wilder fighting from behind and his power saving him, so to speak. Do you think it's necessarily a lack of his boxing ability? Is it him getting off to a slow start? What is the issue there?
You know what, Lucas? It could be a mixture, but personally speaking, I think Wilder's just not challenged. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I think that, even with Gerald Washington, I don't think that's a fight that he really expected to lose. And once again, he didn't lose. I think when you're a fighter, you have to fight guys who can challenge you, and once again, not to beat on a dead horse, but to me, it's kind of like Tyson versus Douglas. Not saying that Wilder didn't train, right? But, when you're expected to crush a guy, you're not really going to, get up for it, as opposed to if Wilder was fighting Klitschko, or if he was fighting, Anthony Joshua, or if he was fighting, hell, even Luis Ortiz. Those are guys who they have more of a threat to him. And I think personally, Wilder, he's just not being challenged. I think, once again, with Washington, he was fighting very, I'm not going to say lethargic, but he didn't fight with any sense of urgency. I think he just said, I'll give him 3 rounds. Eventually, I'm going to stop him. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And the same thing kind of happened with Arthur Spazilka. I think he was winning rounds. That one actually got into the later rounds. It wasn't, just a 4 or 5 rounder and then got him out of there. But I actually thought Spazilka might etch him out there for a second. And then, of course, he landed the big right hand, and that's all she wrote.
Yep.
Going forward, do you think that Wilder could potentially be the next Klitschko, the next unifier of the heavyweight division?
Lucas, he has a shot. I mean, I've always said I like Wilder. I like his story. I am a little disappointed at what I heard about last Saturday with Dominic Brazil and his wife and his kids, but that's obviously another story for another time, and hopefully we get all the facts straight about what happened. But the reality is I like Wilder. I like how he got into it to really, save his daughter's life. And, he seems like a person who loves being champion. So I think he has the potential to be the next Klitschko. Once again, I'll say this all the time. You may say I'm half British, but I am on the Anthony Joshua bandwagon. And I think he's going to have a lot of trouble with Anthony Joshua. I personally think Anthony Joshua gets by Klitschko. I think we see an end of an era, and we see a massive unification bout between Wilder versus Joshua. And that's a To me, that's a 50-50 fight. I think Joshua obviously has the tools to be Wilder, and I think Wilder has the power, not the boxing skill, but the power to beat Anthony Joshua. So, to go back to your question, Luke, does he have the opportunity to be undisputed? Yes. I think it really depends on, if he can beat Joshua, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah, that's kind of what I actually said in one of my articles. If you are listening and you want to read it, go ahead and go to heavybagboxing.com. But I was discussing whether or not he could be, the next best heavyweight, especially when it comes to fighting those top guys there like Fury, Klitschko, and the Joshua. And to be honest, he can. And like you said, not necessarily because of his boxing ability, but more of I question anybody's ability to take his punches. That's it's a lot to stand up to. Klitschko struggles with anybody that's, his height, and I think that's going to continue to be a problem. So the Joshua fight, because he's not his height, I think that's going to definitely be a surprise. We wait to see how that ends, and I'm going to wait on my predictions for that one. But I think Wilder's going to beat most of them. I can see Wilder beating Fury, simply because Fury chin is a little shaky anyway. I mean, he did get dropped by glorified cruiserweight and Steve Cunningham. Um,
Right.
Steve knows I mean no offense by that, but we've talked to him about that punch. He says that's one of the best memories of boxing for him. Um, but that itself to me makes Fury very sketchy. However, he could still come back from that, and his height and his long reach, you could keep Wilder at bay. Um, but again, his boxing ability isn't what a Klitschko's is, and I think Klitschko would be able to still be it if his youth was still on his side. But unfortunately, that is not the case. He is definitely getting up there in age, and just a matter of time before one of these new cats step in and kind of take the reins. And it looks to me like it is going to be Wilder. Now, this weekend, very big fight. Um, I think it actually could be a pay-per-view, but PBC doesn't really do pay-per-views, so it's going to be on national TV. Danny Garcia versus Keith Thurman. I know it's a hard one to pick. A lot of people are saying it's a 50-50 fight, Jules, but you got to do it, man. You got to give me your prediction and tell me how you see it going down.
Oh my gosh, you are killing me, Lucas. You're killing me. Maybe I should do the cop out and go for a draw. I don't know. That's the cop out answer. I'll be honest with you. I know I should pick. I know I should pick. I feel like the edge goes to Keith Thurman, not because he's the better boxer, but I feel because he's had better competition as of late, if that makes any sense. I feel that he's tested himself a lot more than Danny Garcia has. And, not taking away from from Danny Garcia. I mean, he defended his belt. But, once again, unfortunately, they gave him that nickname, Danny, Cherry Picker Garcia, for a reason, because a lot of his opponents that he fought, maybe going back since to Matisse and Khan, weren't really up to par competition. I mean, no one is going to say that Rod Salka was a world beater. You know what I mean? And it was a great knockout, but it wasn't. I mean, he was ranked like number 86, something like that. I mean, he wasn't a threat to Danny Garcia. And I think with Keith was fighting guys, Robert Guerrero. After that, he fought Sean Porter. He was testing himself. And I think, if Thurman really makes this a hard fight based on his past experience he's had with Sean Porter and with Robert Guerrero, I don't know. I don't know if Garcia is still that same fighter that he was when he fought Matisse and when he fought Amir Khan. So if I had to pick, I would say maybe Thurman edges it out, but I won't be surprised if Garcia, gets the win. So I know it's a cop out, but it's a 50-50 fight, man. It's hard.
Oh man, it is. And you know what? I hate to ever bet or pick against Danny Garcia, because it seems like every time I do, it comes back to bite me in the ass. However, he has had a lot of close calls. One with is supposed to be our special guest tonight, Lamont Peterson. Uh, Mauricio Herrera should have beat him. He got robbed in Puerto Rico. There's the list goes on. I think it's a lot closer fights than what it needs to be. Um, he fought life and death with Lucas Matisse, but that was back when at least he was a beast. He does make his return soon, so looking forward to that. But I got to go Keith Thurman too, even though I hate to do it. At some point, Danny Garcia cannot just keep getting lucky with some of those shots. I mean, with the shot he hit Khan with, his eyes were literally closed. He closed his eyes and just swung. I'm sure some of it was timing. I'm not saying it's all completely luck, but come on, man, he had his eyes closed. I mean, and those life and death fights, and then he like you said, he takes the step down in competition, whereas Thurman's been in there with a lot stiffer as of late, and it's gonna harden him up, and it's gonna be enough for him to etch out that win. Um, Garcia's very sturdy fighter. I mean, I can't really see him getting knocked out by Thurman, or even a stoppage. I mean, I think it's going the distance. I know you didn't really say. You just said you think Thurman's going to win. Did you say decision?
I would definitely say decision. To play devil's advocate, I like Keith Thurman. I think he's intelligent. I like that he has that, that championship mentality where he wants to face the best. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think that name, Keith One-Time Thurman, his last two fights, he didn't have that one-time type of power. And, personally speaking,
yes,
I don't see him knocking him out. But, there's a possibility that he hurts Garcia a couple of times. And Garcia has a good chin. So I think, honestly, I have to say, Thurman by decision if he does get it. But, once again, look, I will say this. Garcia has underrated boxing skills.
I'll be in
That's
touch
one
with
thing
you
I'll
on
say.
Twitter,
His
then.
boxing skills are very underrated.
All right, bye. All right. Sorry, I kind of had to step away there for a second. Talking about two Lamont Peterson's people. So he had something come up. He's not able to come on to the show tonight. He wanted to reschedule maybe for tomorrow. If not, maybe next week or something. We will work out that and then get back to you here on Twitter or Facebook, any way we can. But so Lamont Peterson is canceled for the night. Now you got to think, Jules, that Lamont Peterson, especially after winning his WBA belt, that he's looking very closely into this Garcia-Thurman fight. Him being a PBC fighter, too, I mean, it's very likely he might get the winner of this.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I would think that's the most logical step for Lamont Peterson. I mean, once again, he, with Danny Garcia, you know what I mean? That was a very, very close fight. A lot of people felt that, he did enough to win. I had it for Garcia. I had Garcia winning that fight, but to me, it was kind of like, Granadas versus Broner. You can see it going other way. It was either way. It was a close fight. So yeah, and I honestly, if Thurman does pull out the win, I would love to see Peterson versus Thurman. I think that's a very good fight for both guys. So yeah, I think I would see him, looking closely at this fight and hopefully getting the winner. And who knows? Maybe he's looking at Brook versus Spence very closely. So.
That's also true. He has a lot on his plate here. Going to be very interesting to see kind of where things go. Honestly, though, the Thurman versus Garcia is one that I honestly think is going to be kind of one for the record books. We might even see a trilogy, guys. I mean, this is, I think it's going to be a barn burner. I honestly do. And I think it's a pay-per-view quality type fight. Now, Jules, I wanted to talk also about a fight that is coming up here pretty soon, which is Lemieux-Stevens, and you were on a conference call earlier?
I was, yes, and it was one of the most explosive conference call I had the pleasure of being on, so that was an absolute pleasure. It got me pumped for the fight, And it's funny. I was excited as a boxing head. I was excited for the fight before, but Stevens and Lemieux, they did not disappoint. Especially Stevens. He had his Brooklyn roots on that conference call, and he was not taking any prisoners. So I'm looking forward to that fight.
And look for that on our social media as well. I'm going to upload the conference call video so you can listen to Jules and other media ask Lemieux and Stevens some questions. But I want to talk a little bit deeper about that. And by the way, Jules, yeah, you're right. Stevens is a great interview, man. We've had him on the show before, and he was in buck wild. He was saying, what does he say? Oh, my power can destroy villages and whole worlds and stuff like that. I love that dude. But what I wanted to talk about was actually ticket pricing. Which I don't talk about pricing on fights, not normally, especially ticket prices. But and this is something I don't normally do either. Is I'm going to recommend people go buy seats for this fight because they're $75 for ringside seats. Is that not crazy?
To be honest with you, for a fight like that, that's phenomenal. I feel
really
that
cheap,
especially,
really cheap.
Yeah, they're really cheap, and that's a fight that you're going to get your money's worth. I don't see any of those guys backing down. Once again, I was on a conference call, with Stevens and Lemieux, and it's funny. I'm obviously going back to my roots and showing my age, but I interned for Lou DiBella when Curtis Stevens was coming up. Curtis Stevens was promoted by Lou DiBella, and I remember when he used to be part of this duo with Jadon Codrington. That's a name you haven't heard in a long time, and it was called the Chin Checkers. And I had the pleasure of actually seeing Curtis Stevens put people to sleep on the Hammerstein Ballroom, and he's always had that warrior fight, that warrior spirit in him. And Lemieux, another guy who has always been a warrior, and his fight with Triple G, even though he got beat with Triple G, showed a lot of heart, doesn't back down. So for $75, I mean, just think about it. How many people paid $100 for Pacquiao versus Mayweather? And that was on pay-per-view. For $75, you get a ringside seat to action. A real grudge match.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is going to be something. I don't know about. I paid $150 back when was it Devin Alexander faced Maidana, and I mean I just basically saw Alexander walking around the ring.
Yeah,
I paid $200 for like fourth row seats. I mean these are ringside seats, $75. I'm amazed because people just I don't know if they just is it that big of a venue? I'm not sure, but man, that's cheap. I mean, if you're in the area, definitely go see that fight because you're getting your money's worth for sure. And I mean, Jules, correct me if I'm wrong during the conference call, but it seems like some genuine hate between these two guys.
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you, Lucas. I was surprised. It caught me. I had to take 2 steps back because, you hear fighters talk, what I'm going to do to you and things of that nature. And, sometimes you can tell when a buildup seems, it seems fake, it seems like it's not legitimate. But I was very surprised. Stevens and Lemieux, they really talked with animosity. As a matter of fact, one of the individuals asked from the media, David Lemieux, this is really the first time I've seen you really get emotional about a fight, and is that going to work against you? And David Lemieux was very professional. I mean, he made it seem like it really wasn't, but it made me curious to say, what is David Lemieux going to swing wildly and go out there trying to knock Stevens out? So I feel like when you have a grudge match against two guys who can bang, I mean, you are going to get your money's worth. Kudos to Golden Boy Promotions for this.
I mean, yeah, I mean, seeing them go back and forth on Twitter is when I was like, yeah, there's definitely some hate there. A lot of times it is for show and just to sell some tickets, but I really do see some animosity there.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things, I noticed, on the conference call is, I mean, even when people were interviewing them, they were answering the question, and then going back and forth with each other. Lemieux was. I mean, it just was what it was. It was like, they would answer the question, and then Stevens is like, "You're not going to do anything." You know what I mean? And, Lemieux is, basically saying how, what, he wants to put Stevens in his place. And, I think he said how he doesn't like his attitude. His attitude is trash. And, I mean, it got me pumped. I mean, I did that call on my lunch break, and I was fired up, for the rest of the day. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to that fight. Once again, anyone who's going to be in the New York area, you will not be disappointed with this fight. I truly believe, once again, $75 for a ringside seat is a steal.
Yeah, and another fight that was just recently announced, which has kind of the same feel of that fight, is Gabriel Rosado versus Martin Murray.
Lucas, I'm going to be honest with you. You would think I worked for Eddie Hearn because I've been tweeting about that fight since it was announced. I mean, I'm a huge Martin Murray fan. I watched him fight Sergio Martinez. And, after that fight, I said, you know what, I can't wait to see him fight again. He's one of the few fighters to really go a very long way with Triple G. I think he went 10 or 11 rounds before Triple G ended up, beating him when they fought, and I believe it was Monte Carlo. And, listen, Gabe Rosado, you can say what you want about that guy. He is a warrior. That guy, he actually reminds me of the late Arturo Gatti, a blood and guts warrior, comes to fight, and, is always going to put it on the line. So I can't wait for that fight either.
Yeah, I mean, he's either going to, go out on his shield or he's going to win. And, he does it with heart and with fashion. Usually ends up bleeding in every fight. I like to consider him the Ric Flair of boxing. But, he has his own style, his own flair, and, very, very respectable fighter. The working man's fighter, the blue collar fighter. He came up the rough way, but it's been a pleasure watching him, and that's going to be one again for the books. Let's go back though for a minute and take a huge step back to what we first started talking about here, Wilder. There is rumors of him actually close to signing a deal with a rematch with Bermain Stavern. I actually put this on our Facebook, and it seems to be getting some negative feedback. Jules, I think it's not something that the general public want to see.
Lucas, it's going to be blasphemy. As a man of Haitian descent, I always support Bermain Stavern, but realistically speaking, I can understand why. The WBC, they really blundered on this one. Bermain Stavern, I think he fought once in the past year. I think he believed he didn't pass a drug test either recently as well. So it's one of those things where Wilder versus Stavern, the rematch, once again, it's just not something boxing fans want to see. With Wilder, as I stated earlier, he needs to be challenged, and I feel that they're taking that rematch because they're saying, okay, well, you know what, Wilder, we beat him already, number one. Number two, you know what, the views did really well the first time we fought. We can get those views again, but it's not what the fans want to see. The fans want to see Wilder versus Ortiz. They want to see Wilder versus the winner of Klitschko versus Joshua. That's who fans want to see. Hell, I'll even take Wilder versus Parker, but it's just not a fight that should really happen right now. If Bermain had a couple of more fights, maybe go up against Luis Ortiz or go up against Joe Parker. Hell, even Andy Ruiz. A lot of people don't talk about Andy Ruiz. That's a guy who's a contender in the heavyweight division. He had a few more wins under his belt, then I would say, okay, rematch. But I see why it's getting, a lot of negative feedback, and, it's something the WBC really, really blundered on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't even want Wilder facing Parker. I'm semi okay with it. I think everybody's ready for Wilder to finally go ahead and take one of the top guys. I just don't see it happening, or at least not maybe the end of 2017, or we're thinking more into 2018. but I just don't see that fight happening anytime soon. He definitely seems to have them in mind. I just don't know if they can make it done deal by then.
Yeah, but it's just getting to the point where it just has to be done. I mean, Wilder. I wrote a piece, and fans, you can check it out once again at heavybagboxing.com. Is Wilder being overlooked in the heavyweight division, and I think that's the reason why he's being overlooked. He's not taking those fights that the public want to see. We said, okay, you know what? He's going to fight, Washington. We give him a pass. Washington stepped up because, he was a last minute replacement. Understood. But now it's just getting to the point where it's like, okay, Wilder, you're supposed to be one of the baddest men on the planet. It's time for you to unify. We want to see, one heavyweight champion. We want to see the baddest man on the planet. I mean, when's the last time we had an undisputed heavyweight champion? Lennox Lewis? Because it was Vladimir and Vitaly always splitting the belts, because they refused to fight each other. So it's time. It's really time for a unified champion. And, I really hope that that's what Wilder and the other heavyweights are looking to do. But right now, as you said about that rematch with Bermane Stiverne, it doesn't look like any of those guys are in the sights right now.
Yeah, definitely seems that way. But I'm looking forward to whatever happens. I mean, the heavyweight division finally has a good spark back into it. And it's not just Klitschko, walking all over people in there anymore. That's for sure. Some news came around also. Andre Ward supposedly has booked a date as well as the T-Mobile Arena for the rematch with Kovalev. And apparently Andre Ward's attorney is also saying that he's wanting Kovalev next. However, apparently he's also trying to still negotiate some stuff that was inside of the rematch clause, which I would imagine mainly is the money. I mean, really, do you want to see Andre Ward fight anybody else? It's Kovalev or nothing, right? Are you with me there, Jules?
Yeah, 100%, Lucas. I got to say, you know what? Don't get me wrong. I could see Andre Ward versus Joe Smith as an appetizer. You know what I mean? Or you know what? If Andre Ward says, listen, you know what? I want to fight Adonis. I want to unify.
Yeah.
And then I'll fight Stevenson. I would give him. That's the only pass I'd give him. Those only two passes I would give him. If he says, you know what? I'll fight, Joe Smith. That's a fun fight. Or I'm going to unify with Adonis. And then I'll fight Kovalev. But you're right. If it's not any of those two for me, it's got to be Kovalev. A lot of unanswered questions from a lot of the fans. And Andre Ward being a true champion, a true sport, you cannot take that away from him. I know that bothers him. I don't care what any fighter says, with how they feel in the public, what they say in an interview. I know that bothers him. People saying, oh, you didn't win. You got that by luck. This is the first time ever in his career where people have said to him that you have not won that fight. And that bothers him as a champion, someone who's in his prime. I don't care who you are as a fighter, that bothers you.
I mean, it's got to. Can't blame him.
Just case in point, Lucas, we look at Floyd. Floyd has always said he's the best. He always says that there's nobody that can beat him. Even when the Marcus Maidana fight, okay, he won that fight, the first fight, okay? He won that fight. But there were people out there who were saying that maybe he lost. And he granted Maidana a rematch because you knew inside that bothered him. Same thing with the first Castillo fight. He rematched Castillo again because a lot of people were saying Castillo got robbed. So when you're a fighter, I don't care who it is. I don't care how much money you have. Deep down inside, you're a fighter, and you want to prove that you're the best, and you don't want to have any of your wins disputed. And I know that Andre Ward feels that way. I know he feels that way, and I'm sure he probably gets it from some of his fans, saying, when are you going to fight Kovalev again? When are you going to have a more decisive victory? So I think he's going to fight Kovalev. I think they're going to go with the money. And to be honest with you, I think that really is the most profitable fight for both men. So.
Yeah, I mean, he can't just leave, and have Kovalev hanging over his head. It's going to be like that the rest of his life if he doesn't continue to fight him. But I agree with you. Those two options that you did, I would actually, if I was Kovalev, I would say that's okay if you choose to fight them because I think he has a better chance of landing, Kovalev does, fights with Joe Smith Jr., Don Stevenson may be a little bit harder because he's been trying to fight Stevenson for a while. But you got to think if Ward does happen to lose to them, well, I mean that just means Kovalev can add even more fuel to the fire and maybe even upset that. But regardless, I mean those four is enough to make for some very exciting fights coming forward. Hopefully, we see some of those four getting thrown around, especially after the rematch. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah,
mind seeing
definitely.
whoever wins, fighting Joe Smith or Adonis, or who loses. It doesn't matter. It's going to make for a good fight.
Yeah, agreed 100%, Lucas. And once again, I keep forgetting to throw out there, we got Battle Jack, who's going to come into the mix. He recently left the
Yeah,
168-pound division. So I'm going to be honest with you, the 175-pound division is very exciting. It actually kind of reminds me of the heavyweight division, all these names that are being thrown around. And, once again, but you're right. Andre Ward, really, the number one guy he should be going after is Kovalev. That should not even be a question. He shouldn't even leave with that dispute. It would kind of actually like being like Lennox Lewis and Vitaly Klitschko. Lewis never gave Klitschko that rematch after that very, very close fight. And even though they won, it was still people were saying, well, you never gave Vitaly that rematch. And that's something that even though Lennox Lewis has had a brilliant career, it's one of the things that people are going to talk about, hardcore boxing fans, how he retired without giving Klitschko that rematch. And I don't think Ward wants to be in that situation. I know he's a proud champion. He's proud to be undefeated. And I really think that he's going to fight Kovalev next.
yeah, it definitely seems that way. And I'm relieved because he was semi talking about retirement. I don't know if that was just to try to get some certain things in his favor or not, but I was starting to
Right.
think that that was actually a possibility. I think that's about it. Did you have anything else you want to touch on, Jules?
I mean, I guess it's kind of early. I figured maybe we touch on it next week's show, but Triple G versus Danny Jacobs is coming up in a couple of weeks. It's actually a stacked March with, once again, as you said, with Thurman Garcia, and then we have Lemieux versus Stevens, and then Triple G versus Jacobs. And I wrote a piece. Once again, you can check it out, heavybackboxing.com. Does Danny Jacobs have the opportunity to make an upset? What do you think, Luke? Do you think that Danny Jacobs has the tool for an upset?
I definitely do think he has it. I mean, I have utmost respect for Peter Quillen, and look how he did Peter Quillen. I mean, Peter Quillen's
Right.
no easy out. He's a champ. I mean, and he got steamrolled. If there's anybody's with enough power and boxing ability combined that Golovkin has faced, Jacobs is it. He's been looking for that matchup that will finally say, is Golovkin for real? Because, to be honest, the rest of his competition has a big question mark on it. Yes, he did beat a Martin Murray and a David Lemieux, but people can downplay those. Nobody's going to be able to downplay him knocking out Daniel Jacobs, at least not
Right.
legitimately. Um, and I think he definitely has a very real chance. You've seen the knockout that he did to Peter Quillen. I mean, not only did he knock him out, he made his legs go, newborn deer. But it was a bad knockout, and to be honest, after I saw kind of how the Golovkin Brook situation played out, I could definitely see Jacobs filling in some of those holes and keeping the pressure on him. But Golovkin can't eat those shots. He cannot eat the same shots that Brook was be dishing out if it was coming from Jacobs. That's a completely different power level. He can't just let him get hit like that. So I think this is going to be the first true test. While I think he can win, will he win is a completely different story. Um, but Jules, what was your take on it?
You know what, Lucas? I'm going to be honest with you. I have been so enamored with Triple G's knockouts that I totally took out the equation that what happens with Triple G when he gets hit by a full blown middleweight. And you're right. Jacobs does have a chance to win. He has a chance to win because, as we said with Peter Quillen, it wasn't just that he hurt Quillen, he knocked out Quillen. He did it in the first round. He did it in the first round. Danny Jacobs made a huge statement by knocking out Peter Quillen in that first round. In my opinion, that was maybe one of his greatest wins of his career professionally. Obviously his fight with cancer by far none is his biggest win in life, but definitely, that Peter Quillen knockout was a huge win. And I'm also intrigued because, there are a lot of rumors going around. I don't know how true it is that Triple G's team already set up a fight with him versus, I believe, Billy Joe Saunders. So it's kind of intriguing to me because I'm thinking, okay, are these guys actually overlooking a power punching middleweight like Danny Jacobs? So I'm curious to see how that works. Is Triple G's mind on the fight, and is he taking Daniel Jacobs lightly? And if he is, it's going to be a rude awakening. We may see another Tyson Douglas-esque upset. So
I definitely think it's a possibility, and to answer the question, I do think they're overlooking him definitely, because you got to think about it. You're talking about he's negotiating other fights, not just Saunders, but he's still negotiating with Canelo. And last I heard is they were close. So not only is he almost got another fight done with Saunders, he's not looking one fight past Jacobs. He's looking two fights past Jacobs, which is that's a no-no. That is a no-no.
Definitely.
I got nothing but respect for Golovkin. He's obviously a monster in the division, but Jacobs is no slouch either. He's champ for a reason, and we may see a Tyson-esque type upset. Very possibility. Jules, it was a good show. Sorry, viewers, that Lamont Peterson wasn't able to make it on. But like I said, do check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We will update you guys and let you know when he will be returning. Possibility of tomorrow, later this week, or maybe even next week. Gotta let us know. But for Jules and myself, this was Tough Talk Tuesday, and join us again next week.